Great. Well, welcome everyone to the Pearson Business Book Club. My name is Eloise Cook and I'm the publisher for the professional business lists at Pearson. If you've not been here before, it's each month we choose a Pearson business or personal development book and invite the author on to discuss it. They'll also give a masterclass on a key concept from the book. And if you have to leave halfway through, the video will be available to watch on demand at the book club website. And so I'm delighted that this month we have Jo Owen joining us. Hi, Jo.
It's very good to be with you.
Excellent, excellent. So Jo is on to talk about How to Lead, which is our October business book of the month. It's sold over 100,000 copies over its various editions, and if you haven't got a copy yet, you can download a sample chapter of the book from the book club webpage. So all throughout we'll be asking you to submit questions for Jo towards the end, so please use the Q&A function, and we'll pose these to Jo later on. So Jo, I'm going to introduce you. I've got quite a novel introduction for you. So Jo is an established Pearson author and he practices what he preaches about leadership. As a leader, he is the founder of 8 NGOs with over $100 million turnover, including Teach First, which is the UK's largest graduate recruiter. Previously, you were a partner at Accenture. You started a bank, you built a business in Japan, you got sued for $12 billion when $1 billion was worth something. I hope you'll tell us more about that. And you were the best nappy salesman in Birmingham, and you were responsible for putting the blue speckle in Daz. So is that blue speck international, Jo? I'm just wondering if that's a British thing.
Very British, I have to say. And the surprising thing is, it does actually do something. It's not just cosmetic, it's the special blue whitener, but don't get me onto that.
Right.
So there you go.
Oh, right. So if you're not familiar with Daz, it's a washing powder which has a little blue speckle in it, and it does make it stand out. I will agree with that. And you are also as well as How to Lead, which we're talking about today, you're also the author of How to Manage, How to Sell, How to Coach, How to Influence and Persuade, Resilience and Global Teams. So I think you are winning the award for the most books written by a book club author so far. Congratulations. And
it's going to be winning the prize for the most original book titles. So
perhaps
you have to guess what they're about. So.
Yeah, we'll never work it out, will we? Your books have been published in over 100 editions globally, and you're the only person to win the Chartered Management Institute Gold Medal 4 times, which is a fantastic achievement. So, Jo, welcome. Thank you for doing this. How are you?
All the better for being with you today. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, good. I am too. I think your session on hybrid working is something that I think we can all relate to. I think we can all looking for ways to sort of improve what we're doing and how we're working these days. So I think it's going to be fantastic. So I'm going to start. I have some questions I ask all the authors. You could answer for this edition, or perhaps when you wrote the first edition, perhaps. Can you tell me, why did you want to write this book?
So look, I had to write this book because when we started Teach First, our value proposition was come and work for Teach First for twice the grief and half the salary you'll get elsewhere. And we realized that's probably not a very popular value proposition. So we had to come up with something a bit better. And that bit better was, come and join us. You'll be the leaders of the future. Great. And we'll give you leadership training. There was one small problem. We didn't have any leadership training and we couldn't afford it either. So when 185 hardy souls signed up for the program, I very quickly realized we had to create a leadership program. And that's how I suddenly found myself in this world of leadership. And it's a world where I've just become a complete leadership anorak since then, exploring leadership from every which way. And the latest edition really as a response to the pandemic, when I realized that the world of leadership is fundamentally changing. We'll talk about this more in a moment, but changing in a way that actually reflects two of my previous books. One is that this whole hybrid and remote working is actually, there's a lot of similarity with working on global teams. I mean, global teams are kind of remote teams on steroids. Okay, there's an advertorial coming up for Pearson. It'll be clear.
Yes.
And the other one was, there's been a lot of mental health challenges around this whole remote working. And actually, one of my previous books had been Resilience, again, by a wonderful publishing house called, oh yes, Pearson, what a surprise. Okay. So in a sense, it was completely natural that I had to do this, and had to do this book with very much the lens of how do you make leadership work in a hybrid world, and secondly, how is hybrid working changing the world of leadership and management? And I think that's what we'll explore shortly. So long answer, short question.
No, it's great, and it's fantastic that the book really feels like it's evolved over these editions, and it's still as current, still as topical as people need it to be. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me, was there anything that surprised you about writing this book?
Well, I think we'll come on to this in a moment, but I actually believe that the pandemic is a watershed moment. People look back at the world of leadership pre and post pandemic, simply because the skills required are different. So everyone's getting terribly excited about what's going to happen to city centre offices and what's going to happen to Starbucks. And I'll go like, well, that's kind of interesting, sort of. But actually, the deeper and bigger and more significant revolution is in the way that leadership and management is going to have to evolve in response to this new world of hybrid work. And that's a revolution which is in progress as we speak, which actually means that this is possibly the best time for people to be in the world of leadership and management, because you really are seeing your world change, and you've got a chance to effect that change in a way that is positive for yourself and your teams and where you work. So it's a great moment in leadership history.
Great, right. I feel we're on the precipice of something exciting.
Yeah. We're not on a precipice. I hope we're not going to fall off it. We're going to fly off it.
We are launching.
Launching, yeah.
And how do you want readers to feel after reading your book?
I want them to feel empowered, positive, and I want them to feel that anyone can lead and everyone can lead better. So leadership is not about your title. It's about what you do. So you can be a new employee, new to the world of work, and you can lead, because it is about what you do. If you take people, your colleagues, your team, if you take people where they would not have got by themselves, you are leading. If you don't take them where they've not got by themselves, I don't care if your title is COO, CEO, President, Prime Minister, you're not leading. Okay, so that's wonderfully liberating. So anyone can lead and everyone can lead better, because leadership is about what you do. It is not about your title. So feel empowered, feel positive about that. You're all leaders if you want to be.
Great. Well, that's a fantastic point to jump into your session, I think. So do remember that while Jo's presenting, please post your questions. He's given me permission to jump in, but we'll see how we go.
So again, I'm very happy if this turns out interactive, so that's absolutely fine. I probably need to be given the ability to share my screen, don't I? So let's see if that's working. Oh, right. I hope you're now seeing the title slide, and if you're not, let me know. Right. So look, I'm really excited about this, which is unusual because I'm normally known as something of a recovering pessimist. I was brought up to believe that the only reason it's not raining is because it's about to rain. And yet when I look at what has happened with COVID, where we've all had lots of challenges and difficulties, and some people have really suffered, I actually come out of it with seeing a very, very big silver lining to it, which is, if I can get this to work, that I think that COVID is possibly the best thing to happen to leadership and management in 200 years. In other words, since modern management started with the start of the Industrial Revolution 200 years ago. So the pandemic is forcing changes which are good. In other words, they are permanent changes. We're not going back to the old way of thinking, which is the office is where work happens, and it's changes for the better. And we're going to explore both of those in short order. So today's goals, I will demonstrate that the shift to hybrid working is a permanent change. I'll then explore this very bold claim that leadership and management is going to be fundamentally different and better in the future. It's a big claim, but I believe it's credible. Okay, and we're going to see why. But I want to make this practical as well. So that's the third point, that we'll share some global best practices on how firms and individuals are adopting to this new way of working, because some people are struggling and some people are thriving in this new world. But before we get into that, I thought I'd just ask you all a question. So Emma, if we can get ready with the first poll. I just want to see what you want in terms of hybrid working. How many days a week do you want to be in the office post-pandemic? Here we go. Going to try and do this fast, see how it happens. Lot of votes flooding in. You are so fantastic on this. Right, good. Wow. All right. So we have quite a unique set of answers there. I've not seen this before. Over half of you, or half of you, never want to go to the office again. Right. I'd love to hear some reasons why for that. I will share with you shortly what we're seeing globally as the trends, and I'll share with you why we're seeing these trends. And very few of you want to go back into the office 4 or 5 days a week. Okay, that's interesting. And I think in the Q&A, I'd love to get some discussion on that. And I'd also, if you've got time, just put in the chat function some of your thoughts about why you never want to go back to the office and why you think working from home is better on a permanent basis. Okay, let's end that. That's really helpful. What I'm now going to do is look at what the global results are, and you'll see that that you are an interesting outlier on that. So globally, what we're seeing is that most people want to go in sort of 2 or 3 days a week. And if you look at what's happening globally at the moment, sort of Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, typically the working days, and look at all the transport patterns, and Mondays and Fridays in particular are very quiet until you get into the evening, and suddenly it picks up with people going out on Friday evening. And that's a global phenomenon. So I was astonished to find that even in Japan, people are wanting to go for hybrid work. Having lived in Japan, I can tell you that most Japanese homes are really not set up for working from home. But I guess the joys of commuting 3 or 4 hours a day on commuter trains wears off after 10 or 20 years, even in Japan. So what we're seeing is that globally, for office workers, and all of this is really about office workers, okay? If you're working in the front line, if you're working on the shop floor, you don't have a choice about hybrid working. You have to be there the whole time. So already office workers are in an unusual position here. So what we're saying is that most people globally want some form of hybrid work. The outliers tend not to be random. So there is a skew in the results by age and experience. And there's a kind of COVID aristocracy and COVID proletariat emerges here. The aristocracy are the people who previously had long commutes, but maybe have nice houses, and critically, they're experienced and they have those networks of trust and influence at work, which means that they know how to get things done, they know everyone, and they can just get onto a call and get stuff done without being in the office. Okay, so they're really happy working from home. The COVID proletariat don't have that luxury. They may be working from bed sit or working in a shared flat and suddenly discover they don't really like the people they're sharing flat with, working from an end of bed. They haven't got those networks of trust and influence at work. They don't get the culture, so they really want to be in to get the mentoring, get the support, build those social networks, build the networks of trust and influence, and figure out how to make things happen. But of course, the people they want to learn from are the aristocrats who are away. So there is a bias there in terms of who wants to be in and out. Two challenges here to think about. There's a firm-wide challenge. I think I'm hearing and seeing some firms wanting to force people back into the office 5 days a week. My message to them is you'll win the battle and lose the war. In the short term, they will be able to force people back because they've got coercive power. But in the medium term, they will lose the war for talent because people will simply say, well, I'd rather go to firms which offer me the lifestyle that I actually want in the long term. So I think they will change and they will bend to the needs of talent. Secondly, there is a challenge here, and I think this is particularly acute for the people on this call. It's about being 100% remote. When I go into firms, what I find is that quite often the people who are in the office vituperate about the people who are not in the office, and it's really quite aggressive. So there's no love lost there, and something else is going on. When you're in the office, you are in the flow of all the gossip. You know when the Death Star projects and bosses are approaching, and you can take cover. You know when the interesting opportunities, interesting assignments are coming along, and you can align yourself properly. You can sell your story, you can make your brand. If you're out of the office all the time, you're out of that loop. And that is a challenge. In the short term, it's sort of okay, but in the longer term, those incremental gains of always being in the right place, always having the right conversations, always being able to position yourself add up. And the people who are in the office more than the people who are out will tend to be better positioned to get the right assignments and ultimately get the right promotions. And incidentally, that has a big gender equality issue, because again, what we're seeing is that typically the blokes are wanting to get back to the office more than the females, and that comes back to caring responsibilities. So sexism starts at home, but that is going to sort of play out over the years as the people who are in tend to get those marginal advantages over time. So if you're 100% out, you'll find there isn't a level playing field at work. Having said which, if your firm is 100% remote, and there are quite a few firms that do that, if you're 100% remote, everyone's 100% remote, then you have got a level playing field between all the staff, and you can make that work. It's when some people are out 100% and some people are in, that's when the playing field is no longer level. So it's something to think about. Right. So COVID, let's get back onto why I think COVID has been such a positive change for the world of leadership. And I think I'd pick out three things for you. Here they are. First of all, it's shown how fast we can change. Think back to that time in March 2020. Before that, we had assumed that working from home was shirking from home. And basically in one weekend, we discovered it was not shirking from home, it was working from home, and it is the new normal in one weekend, proving Lenin's dictum that there are some decades when nothing happens, and there are some weeks when decades happen. That was a week when decades happened. So the challenge is this. If we can change that far and that fast, when we challenge a fundamental assumption, what are the other fundamental assumptions that you should be challenging? Because the temptation at this point is to go back into the comfort zone of incremental change, which is fine unless we find our competitors changing and charging ahead. So first lesson is about the challenge of change, and do we want to sustain it or do we want to pull back from it? The second piece of really good news is that everything is harder on a remote team. Everything is harder. We're going to explore this a little bit more in a little bit more detail later. But what it means is that as leaders and managers, you have to be far more deliberate, far more purposeful in everything you do. You have to raise the skills bar has been raised dramatically. So there will be winners and losers in terms of leadership and management, but anyone who is led and managed will ultimately be a winner because the quality of leadership and management is being forced up. We'll explore that in more detail later. Finally, we've discovered that the office was actually a paradise for command and control types. It was a wonderful place for control freak managers because you could just wander across the office and help any of your colleagues at will just by going in, interfering, talking to them. The shock for these control freak managers is you can't do that when half your team is working remotely, because you can't just tap them on the shoulder, look over them, look at what they're doing. You have to trust that they are doing the right thing and making the right decisions while you can't see them. You have to trust that while you can't see them, they are actually working and not practicing the banjo. So we're into a new world where command and control is kind of collapsing, and we're into a new world of delegation, trust, and influence, all of which is like kryptonite to the traditional command and control manager. And if that means that the 20th century command and control manager is out, and we're now into a new world of 21st century management, I, for one, will be absolutely delighted. It means we've got to have leaders and managers who people want to follow, not leaders and managers that they have to follow because of the vagaries of the HR assignment system. Right, so I said everything was harder on a remote team. Let me explore that. Actually, I'm going to go through 2 slides forward. So let's just go to the second poll question. I'd just like to get your opinions on what you are finding some of the toughest challenges in terms of leadership and management. Let's just see what happens here. Remember, you can pick, you've got 3 votes here, which is very nice. So take your time to look at where you'd like to put your votes. And obviously they are all confidential, so that's fine. We have some, I love the voting on this one. It's very dramatic. Lots. Okay. Right. Well, look, those are a brilliant set of results. So I think let's just pick up on a few of these results. let's start with the Sherlock Holmes thing about let's look at the dog that hasn't barked, because that's always interesting. Technology hasn't barked very much. Only 15% of you picked that up. At the start of the pandemic, everyone was obsessed by technology, but now we've figured out how it works. That's great. Fine. Let's move on from there. Productivity. Also, not many of you are picking that up, which is very interesting, because what we're seeing is that typically team members are saying they reckon they are as productive as ever, whereas bosses are saying we doubt that they're as productive as ever. So there's a real split going on there. And this is going to come back to some of the other challenges that we face in terms of goal setting and measuring productivity and knowing how professionals are performing. Because if you think about it, professional work is ambiguous work. So you may be asked to produce a report, but a report could be 1 page long, it could be 100 pages long. It doesn't matter how long it is, there is always another opinion you could canvass and always another fact you could check. So that just makes professional work incredibly ambiguous, and that has consequences. If you're a boss, how do you measure productivity? I can measure productivity on the shop floor of the Land Rover factory, where I've visited a few times, because you can see that very clearly. You go upstairs into the management offices and they'll go, I don't know how to measure productivity at all. Now, in the office, you can sort of see if people are being productive, and you can see if people are being stressed, and you can talk about their goals and you can adjust goals in real time. Remotely, you don't have any of that real time adjustment going on. So again, you have to be much more purposeful and deliberate as a manager in setting goals. And as a team member, you have to be much more purposeful and deliberate in accepting goals. So you've got the clarity and you don't land up having all the stress that comes from being uncertain about what is really expected. Okay. Let's pick up on a couple of other ones that are in there. Okay. Isolation, this is a huge one. Okay. And this goes with stress and mental health. In fact, stress and mental health is to some extent a combination of problems of isolation and the problems of ambiguity that goes with unclear goal setting. So this is where, having done sort of a huge amount of research on global teams, one of the big, at one point, it looked like the solution to having an effective global team was to hire a Castle and Kent and take everyone there and get them drunk. And I realized that that was sort of brilliant, but it wouldn't work in the Middle East. So we had to come up with a slightly more sophisticated solution. And the slightly more sophisticated solution was simple. Buy those train tickets, buy those plane tickets, get the team together, build those bonds of trust, build those bonds of communication, reduce the isolation. So face-to-face does actually matter. Let me pick up on another sort of really big one, motivation and morale. Look, motivation is really tough. We're going to talk about how you can do that later on in a remote world. All I will say is this at this point: the first person to work out how to motivate people by email will make a fortune. So there's your opportunity. But I have to say, it's a fortune which is unlikely to be made. So we have to figure out how to make motivation work remotely. And just like productivity paradox, there's a motivation paradox. My research in How to Lead shows that 65% of bosses think they're pretty good at motivation. Only 32% of their followers think that their bosses are only good at motivation. So there is a huge motivation gap there between what bosses think they do and what their team members perceive as well. So we're going to cover how you can bridge that gap later on. Right. Oh, blimey, I didn't realize that was the results weren't being shared. But anyway, well, I hope they were being shared. I'll close that off now. Right. happy to talk about some of the other challenges of remote working, but the basic message on all of the core skills of management is you need to be more purposeful and more deliberate about everything you do when you're working remotely. Because what we've discovered is that the office was a kind of very forgiving place for mediocre management. When you're in the office, you get real-time feedback about how you are performing. And if something goes wrong, or if you miscommunicate, you will hear about that in real time, and you'll be able to adjust in real time. If something goes wrong, or if you miscommunicate when working remotely, you probably won't hear about that for another 24 hours or another 48 hours until the next conference call. And in that time, that little misstep of communication, that small problem will have suddenly grown into a major crisis, because people will have misinterpreted what you said, and inevitably they won't misinterpret positively. They will start to ruminate, they'll start to catastrophize, and then they'll start to believe the whole world's about to fall down and you've got a disaster on your hands. So little problems become much bigger when you're working remotely. You have to be much clearer, much more purposeful, much more deliberate in everything you say and everything you do when working remotely. That's good news. Skills bar rises. Fine. That's the sort of 20th century piece of this. But then there's the 21st century challenge of working remotely. We have to learn the skills of influence, trust, and persuasion. And again, we can come on to that separately, but there's possibly a whole new seminar, and indeed it is a whole new book called How to Influence and Persuade, published by Pearson, of course. Thank you very much. So we'll come back to that a second time. What I now want to do is just switch tack a little bit and talk about what is it that you need to do to manage yourself and manage your team even better in the world of hybrid work. And I'm just going to share some simple tips from around the world. So the working from home checklist is pretty simple. Right technology, right work environment. We can talk about those. Most people have got those. That's kind of, we worked that out about a year ago, 2 years ago. But there are some things that we haven't worked out yet in terms of managing ourselves and managing others. The first one I want to talk about is managing breaks and boundaries. This is really important for both productivity and for managing stress. So let's talk about the importance of breaks and boundaries for the moment. And this comes, the importance of breaks and boundaries really comes from Frederick Taylor, the godfather of scientific management, and here he is. And his mission was to maximize the productivity of workers. And in one famous study, he looked at the productivity of workers shifting pig iron. And there are 2 workers shifting pig iron. And in a famous experiment, he got productivity up from about 6 tons of pig iron being shifted every shift to 42 tons. So a 7-fold increase in productivity. And how did he do that? Well, by observation. But note that he was not a fan of the worker. Right? He was on the side of the bosses, maximize productivity. And what you see here is what he actually thought of workers. And I just love this quotation from him. I mean, one of the very first requirements for a man who is fit to handle pig iron as a regular occupation is that he shall be so stupid and so phlegmatic that he more nearly resembles in his mental makeup the ox than any other type. I mean, blimey, he is not on your side at all. Okay? And yet, through diligent observation, what he discovered was that if you want to maximize productivity, he forced laborers to rest for 5 minutes every hour, forced them to, even if they didn't feel tired. And that actually maximized productivity the other 55 minutes over the 8-hour or 9-hour shift that they were working in those days. And it's just the same with office workers, if not even more important. You have to have those breaks. Now go back to the office and think about how things actually worked there. Breaks were sort of naturally built into the day. You'd finish one meeting, and instead of going straight to the next meeting, you'd have 5 minutes where you go to the restaurant, grab a coffee, talk to a colleague, decompress from the last meeting, and get ready for the next meeting. When you're on Zoom or whatever it is, you go click straight from one meeting to the next. That 5 minutes turns out not to be sort of lost time. It's really, really productive time. So some of the best firms now are saying, right, in future, all Zoom meetings, either 50 minutes or 25 minutes, they build in those breaks. Some are saying meetings start at 10 past the hour, not on the hour. Okay? Just again, building in that break. Think about that break. Other breaks, really important, starting at the end of the day. I see lots of people working from home now recreate their commute, because the commute is a great way of, again, decompressing from the day, getting work behind you, forgetting work, getting ready for home, okay, on the way back, and coming into the office. It's a great way of mentally preparing for the day, rehearsing for the day, thinking about what you need to do, and getting your mind in order. So what some people do now is when they start the day, they literally go for a walk around the block, grab coffee at Starbucks or whatever it is, come home, and when they get back, they're sort of no longer entering their home or flat, they're entering their office. And at the end of the day, they pack everything away, go for another walk around the block, and again, work is left. So create breaks, create boundaries, really simple. Right. I'll move on now. I talked about the need for 21st century leadership. Here is what that is all about. You can read that as fast as I can read it. I'll leave that with you. This is the new paradigm, the new world. That is why this is a fundamentally new world. A lot of managers will not make that transition. They simply will find it too difficult. They're stuck in the traditional leadership model. That is your opportunity. You have the opportunity to be the leaders of the future, push the old leaders aside. The world of hybrid work is absolutely suited for you. So the golden question for leadership in the 21st century is this, and I've done lots of research trying to correlate what makes a good leader, how, and in particular, my bias has been looking at leadership through the lens of followers, right? So from the point of view of followers, how can you be seen as a good boss? And there's one question which consistently predicts whether you will be judged well on all the other objectives and criteria, such as being, having great vision, being motivational, being decisive, all those traditional metrics. Here is the question. There is the question. It's the golden question. My boss cares for me and my career. Agree, disagree on a 5-point scale. If you show that you care for your team member, they will respond in bucket loads. And think about it. Who are the leaders you've wanted to work for? The bosses who care for you or the bosses who don't care for you? And caring isn't about popularity. It isn't about having candy on your desk, because popularity is the high road to weakness. That's why you always compromise, and you will always accept reasons for why deadlines should be brought back or targets should be reduced. So popularity is the road to weakness. Caring is about trust and respect. So the currency of power in future isn't just your formal span of authority and budget. It's about your trust and influence across the organization. If you have trust and influence, that can amplify your formal power massively, and you can get things done through people you don't control. That's hugely important skill. And with your own team members, caring may involve having those difficult conversations about performance and productivity at an early stage, so that you can work together to get to a good outcome. That's how you build trust. That's how you build, show that you care. So remember that. My boss cares for me, to my career. succeeding? That's the golden question for success in the 21st century. Right. I will move briefly on to how to make remote working work your team. A few very simple things for you to take away. One, hold a methods adoption workshop. What's that? Okay. I stole the name from IBM. They use this in all their global teams. Whenever a global team gets together and whenever a remote team gets together or a hybrid team gets together, they don't know how to work. In the office, you kind of work it out because you can see it by observation. It's trial and error. You can't do observation. You can't do trial and error remotely. So again, you have to be more purposeful and deliberate. You all sit down together remotely if you have to, and you ask all the questions you need to ask, like, what are our working hours? When are we going to communicate? When are we going to have communication blackouts so I can actually do some concentrated work? So one team came up with the following hours. Core working hours were, I'm going to try and remember this, 6:30 till 8 in the morning. What? 10 till 3 in the afternoon, and 8 till 9 in the evening, roughly. Kind of weird hours. What's going on there? Well, that was a team where everyone had caring responsibilities. So, of course, that perfectly suited them for all the child minding or all their other caring duties. Okay? And they said that it would only be in those core hours 10 to 3 that you'd have meetings. The early and late hours were for solo work and maybe dealing with emails and all that sort of stuff. So hold a methods adoption workshop, work out how you want to work. And if anyone wants to know what are the questions you want to ask, I can probably find a way of getting them distributed through Eloise and Pierce. Okay. Second, use hybrid working to raise the skills bar. We've talked about how skills have to be raised when you're working remotely. That's good. But how do you do it? Here's a real simple way. You can do it for yourself and you can do it for your team. After every significant event, which could be as simple as a phone call, big phone call, video call, whatever it is, could be after a meeting that went well or badly, it could be after a sales call, anything that you think is faintly important. Ask yourself 2 questions in this order. Here's our question 1. WWW. What went well? Capture yourself and your team succeeding, because people are often lousy at learning from success. We think success is natural. Success is not natural. If something works, it's the result of you having done something right. Capture what you were doing right, because that is your secret source of success. And capture all those little things that you did right and remember them and try them again. Okay? What went well? Not WWW's evil twin, what went wrong? Because that's our mandate for backstabbing, politicking, and achieving nothing. Okay? So how do you deal with the tough stuff? You then ask the second question, EBI, even better if. It would have been even better if, okay, which forces people to be constructive. So I do this with sales teams, right? And I'll talk a lot about the WWWs and then the EBI, even better if. And these are seasoned sales professionals. They'll say things like, it would have been even better if we'd listened more. Even better if we'd asked more questions and said less. Even better if we'd done a bit more preparation. Okay? Positive, simple messages. Okay? Now think about, if you turn that around as what went wrong, it's like, why didn't you just shut up and listen a bit more? Why didn't you do the preparation properly? At which point you've just got bun fight. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know what my computer's doing there. Right. So WWW, EBI, real simple disciplines. Over years, you'll just transform your leadership capabilities. And finally, look, working remotely, you can spend your whole time communicating and no time doing. So you have to control the communications beast. So agree when and where, when and how you'll communicate. That's part of the methods adoption workshop, but a real simple technique here. This from IT people will recognize this agile working and all that kind of good stuff. Start the day or start the week with a simple meeting where you go around the whole team and do a YTB. Ask each team member, YTB, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And what are the blockers? Where do you need help? Yesterday, today, blockers. Okay. Give everyone 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever you want, short, sharp, to the point. And in that 1 or 2 minutes per person, everyone will figure out where everyone else is. They'll know what's happening. So a lot of that noisy communication disappears. As a team leader, well, as a team follower, you will then have the reassurance that you're doing the right thing, and you'll be able to get the help that you need because you've talked about the blockers and where the help is required. And as a team leader, you've got the perfect accountability mechanism. You'll know, have people done yesterday what they said they were going to do yesterday? Are they doing today the things I want them to do today? And blockers, yeah, I now know where, as a team leader, I need to invest my time to help the team. Okay. Right. I'm short on time. I'm just going to do one final thing on this and then open it up for questions. Look, we talked about the motivation gap. How do you build motivation? Huge question. The good news is that you don't need to sort of stand on your desk or your virtual desk and make an inspiring speech to people, to your team every Monday morning. After 11 years' work of trying to figure out how you build motivation at a system level with millions of people, what we've discovered, and this is now proven at a system level, you need to put in place 4 things. And it's this simple. First, supportive relationships. Not traditional command and control, supportive relationships, both vertically and horizontally. Really important for motivation. And we talked about how you can do that on the vertical scale. Okay, step 1. Step 2, autonomy. Professionals don't like being managed. So the solution is manage them less, and they will rise to the occasion. But you have to then be very clear about what their goals are. So professionals don't like ambiguity, give them clarity. And if you give them clarity, you'll give yourself accountability, right? So it's very nice. Third, work on mastery and growth. It's very hard to be motivated if you don't have the skills for today's role and you're not building the skills tomorrow's role. And we talked about how you can build mastery, YTB, and WWW, what went well, and EBI. Even better if you do it after every call. And finally, it's a lot easier to be motivated if you have clear purpose and clear meaning. And that isn't about the corporate mission statement that's printed on a bronze plaque, or it's not about having posters of people rowing up Mount Everest or whatever it is. Purpose and meaning is personal, and that's probably the trickiest of the 4. We can explore that later if you want to. Right, I've given a real rapid Cook's tour of this. Remember that this is a huge sea change in leadership management. The revolution is only just beginning to unfold. But what we're going to see is this huge shift where, first of all, the skills that you need as a manager and leader are going to have to go up. So that's great. Some will make it, some won't. Yeah, if you're here, which shows a dedication to learning and growing and improving, so you're probably going to be one of the winners. Congratulations. And secondly, it's not just about improving the traditional skills, it's about learning the new 21st century skills of building your networks, trust, influence, delegation, and persuasion. So if you can do that, that's great. And finally, become the leader that people want to follow, not the leader they have to follow. Remember that golden question, my boss cares for me and my career. So this is the revolution. You're at the forefront of it. You can come out of this far stronger, far better than ever before. But whatever your journey is, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for listening, and I will take questions if there are any. And if there aren't, I'll talk for another 8 hours because I get really excited about this. And I've skated over a lot of stuff very quickly, so I've left a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, there's so much to cover, but thank you. That was really interesting. We have got some questions coming in, and as a reminder, please use the Q&A function if you haven't already. So one question is, can you please repeat the YTB point? So just a refresher on that.
YTB, right, so start the day with a YTB meeting. Each team member has, let's say, 90 seconds. If you're generous, 2 minutes to answer 3 questions. YTB, why? This is what I did yesterday. Yesterday for why. P, today, this is what I am doing today. B, blockers. Here are the blockers that are going to stop me doing what I need to do today. Therefore, this is where I need help. Yesterday, today, blockers. All in 90 seconds per person. Snap, real clarity about what everyone's doing. You've got the accountability mechanism. And again, that isn't original. It's from Agile working, and so, but it works. So let's do it. You know.
Yeah, I'm going to institute that with my team. My team. Right.
You can blame me then. Tell me how it goes.
I will praise you, Jo.
Thank you.
So the next one, let me see if I'm reading this right. With a 100% remote organization, do you recommend in-person town halls or team building at a site local to the majority of employees, knowing that a percentage of employees can't attend because they are a flight away and flights are not in the budget?
Yeah. Well, okay. So look, the first bit of good news is that 100% can work, right? So if provided everyone is 100% remote, then you're all on, then there is a level playing field between everyone. So that's good, right? And furthermore, if you're 100% remote, and there are companies like GitLab that do this, and then say, look them up, GitLab, okay, I think that's right, because they've prepared all the manuals about this is how you do it, okay? So it's a whole big routine. I'm not going to explain it. It's out there. You can check it out. But the level playing field is important. So if you're going to have a get-together, either have it all remote or have it all in person. And again, this came out really strongly from the work on global teams, advertorials for another book by a great publisher, that it is worth investing the money in those flights to get everyone together, because there is something transformative about everyone having that shared experience. So let me give you one really small illustration. I was speaking with a senior executive from a global search firm that will remain anonymous, but you can guess. And she'd come across to Paris to meet some of the team that she didn't really know or trust or like particularly, and got stuck in Paris because of a French air traffic controller strike. Ça change. So she had to do something very un-American. She had to take the train from Gare du Nord to St. Pancras, and she got on the train with this team that she didn't really know, trust or like. And she said it was like a miracle. We didn't know, like, or trust each other when we got on the train. By the time we got to Gare du Nord, we all thought we were all wonderful. And you know what? Forever after, the quality of our communication went through the roof, the trust was all there, and we kind of all knew each other and could work with each other. So that's a firm that does a lot of remote working. But even they go, you know what? There is magic in that getting together. So it may not be in the budget, but find the budget, spend it. There is magic in getting together. But whatever you do, keep the level playing field, all remote or all in. But the mixed is sort of messy. I take a fundamentalist view on that. So.
Great. Next one. Love the presentation and agree with it. However, I'm starting to hear people say things like, he's working from home today, nod wink, with the implication they're not really working. How can we as managers really trust that people are working when they're at home?
So look, this whisper is going to get louder and louder. And you heard me say that already. Bosses doubt that team members are actually as productive as they claim to be when working from home. So team members say they're productive, bosses doubt it. So that's already out there. And second, people who are in the office and are hearing this, it's vicious. They vituperate about the people who are not in the office. So there's something nasty going on there. So both as a team leader, as a team member, this cuts through to the critical importance of good goal setting. Now, in the office, look at the way goal setting happens. It's a very interactive thing. You know, the boss will say, could you write this report? Okay, yeah, all right, fine. Okay. And it's like, well, actually, who's it really for? What do they really want? Well, there's this bit of information, but do you think we should really pursue that? No. And what are they? How are they going to use it? What's the decision going to be? And there's this whole interactive thing that goes on. It's not just a sort of 20-second or 1 minute write the report. Yeah, for the next hours and days, there'll be this constant ad hoc checking about, is this right, that right, whatever. Now, when you're working remotely, you can't have that ad hoc stuff. So you have to think through really clearly. You have to think through all those questions very clearly. Who's it for? What do they really want? How long has it got to be? What are the questions we need to ask? Where do we really need to push? Where can we leave out? It's actually quite difficult to do that goal setting really well. You can't do it ad hoc. You have to be very purposeful, very deliberate about it. And again, you more or less need that. I may somewhere have a checklist of the sort of questions you need to ask. Actually, it may actually be in the book. If I've written the book right, it should be in there. Right? So I read the book. So again, it's another example of being more purposeful and deliberate and removing that ambiguity from the goal setting. Because if there's ambiguity, then A, the team member's going to be stressed out, like, am I doing the right thing? And B, the boss is going to be thinking, hang on, are they really, what are they really doing? Are they doing the right thing? But once you've got complete clarity, it's like, fine, I know what's required, I know what good looks like, and I know how long it's going to take. Done, right? So drive that ambiguity out, and then you've got much more accountability, and some of that questioning will disappear. But I think we're going to hear more of it.
Great. And last question, what would you say to those people feeling despondent about the remote world being the future of work? For people in the first 5 to 10 years at work, it can feel really hard and unmotivating to think that mostly video calls for the rest of our lives is the future. And it's especially hard for people with tricky home working situations or who enjoy the social aspect of in-person work.
Yeah, so look, this whole working from home has been divisive. Some people love it, some people hate it. And as I say, there is a real bias there in terms of age and experience. So people who are newer to the world of work actually want to be in much more than people with the wrong coloured hair like me. So yeah, it is very different there. Look, there is nothing to stop you getting to the office, number one. So get in there, and I'm really clear that hybrid work does mean hybrid. It doesn't mean working from home all the time. That human connection, building those networks of trust and influence, learning the culture, getting the mentoring and support. These are all really, really important things, and they do happen best in the office. Home is great for when you need really focused and concentrated work. If you've got a lousy home working environment, then hopefully the office will be redesigned much more clearly, so into collaborative spaces, and then like workspaces where people are not meant to be interrupted. At the moment, offices are just really badly designed because they haven't thought through what happens in the office. It's all jumbled up. But once you actually think about, well, some of the time you need really collaborative space, sometimes you need really solo space, deep focus, deep concentration space, people then redesign the office to meet those needs. So yeah, my sympathies go out to you, but I think get in there, make the most of it.
Sounds sensible. Right, so I'm just going to pop my slides back on. So if people want to stay in touch with Jo, they can find him on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. So get in touch with Jo if you want to ask him any more questions. And I'll also do a plug for next month's session. We on the 22nd of November at 2 p.m. UK time, our next book of the month will be Solvable by Arnaud Chevalier and Ulrich Enders, and their masterclass will be on 3 steps to solve any problem. And I will keep trying.
Can I come to that? That sounds great.
Please do, Jo. I'll keep improving my pronunciation there. So thank you to you, Jo, for the masterclass. Thank you to everyone for attending and anyone watching this on demand. Please sign up for our mailing list and please check out Jo's book. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.